Hi, everyone. I'm Glauco. I'm a senior character artist right now working at Sony Santa Monica. I'm working on God of War. Previously, I was at Naughty Dog working on Uncharted. So today, I've prepared a little bit of... I want to talk about this project that I'm doing on my personal time, which is this gorilla. It's more like a study, and right now it's still in very early stages. But before talking about that, like coming to the event today, I was thinking about like what we are doing here, and then during the summit, and then so we have a bunch of amazing artists talking, and then we are getting inspired by everything they are talking, and everything they're showing, all the techniques and everything. But how can we really digest and really gather all this knowledge and really apply to our work? So this is totally unprepared, as you guys can see. But it's just something that I really wanted to say that, like 2 weeks ago, for example, I was at the Anatomy Tools course with Andrew, and that actually blew my mind. So when I got home, I was like, damn, it's like so much knowledge. I really need to find a way to really incorporate that into my work. So what I came up with is just a very simple idea, just picking up a few topics that you guys really want to improve, and then just practice that. And then you really don't need to put that into a personal project or at work right now, but just make sure you are like trying and practicing those techniques. Like, for example, what Denzel was showing with like all the masks and everything. You want to learn how you can do that as well. Just grab a sphere and try some of those techniques. And then after a while, you can just apply to your own work. So this is just something that I wanted to say, because I'm pretty sure all of you guys learned and saw so much that now you guys like gonna get back to work tomorrow and then thinking like, oh man, this is too much, that was awesome, but how can you transform this awesomeness into something that you apply into yourself? Well, anyways, I just wanted to say thanks to Pixelogic and all of you guys, and also Nauman for hosting the event here. And these guys are awesome. Yeah. Yeah, these guys get all the credit, but I know there's even more people behind the scenes working towards, yeah. So I really want to say thanks to everyone involved in the project. You guys can see there's a lot of people here too. So let me see. All right, so this project. So let me just sit here. I'm sorry I won't be able to see all of you guys, but so today this project, this is, like I was saying, this is a gorilla study that I'm doing. And then I'm doing this to study a few things that I wanted to improve in my work. So one of them is fine detailing, but also like I want to study more hair in more a realistic way or more a rendering approach, because what I usually do on hair is all by cards. And then this is, I can also improve that too, but in this case I want to study a little bit of more of rendering. And also I've been doing a lot of blend shapes and facial expressions for this guy. I'm trying to So at work, we usually work with a lot of blend shapes using the FACS system, like based on human anatomy, but now I'm trying to transfer some of those knowledge into and apply it to this guy. I'm not gonna talk too much about blend shapes. I think Jill killed it. And also, yeah, so I have a quick video in Maya here just showing some of these shapes in action, just trying to find ways, how can I improve those as well. But yeah, anyways, I was going to talk a little bit more about that, but I think Jill did an amazing job, so I don't have to spend our time on that. And then, all right, so first of all, I really want to talk about how I approach sculpting, because I can really sit down and just like tell the brushes that I'm using and really sculpt, but I don't think you're gonna get too much out of it. So I really want to try to understand the way I work and the way I approach sculpture, and then try to translate that into words to you guys. So the way what I come up with is these two modes that I go back and forth all the time. It's called structure mode, what I'm thinking about structure, the forms, the anatomy. And then there's this other mode that I jump like so many times. It's called a shape language or a graphic mode. That's the way I call it. It's more like a 3D versus 2D. So when I'm thinking about structure, I'm thinking about like the skull, like the bones, and the anatomy, using all this knowledge that I do on my studies, and then I kind of apply them without thinking too much about it. And then when it comes to the shape language, it's more like the graphical designs of the lines and how they compose, the silhouette and everything. And I go back and forth all the time, so I'm not really thinking, oh, now I'm doing this structure, and now I'm doing the shape. It's just something that I'm constantly checking and thinking about. So let me just open this. This is the low poly version of the model. And how I started, it's pretty much how Jill started. I use pretty much a sphere for everything I do, and then I dynamesh, and then it got to a point that I had to do a topology for the blend shapes in order to blend shapes to work. And then I did my topology in Maya, and then I have this high poly mesh that I'm working on right now. You can see there are still some areas that I need to work. But anyway, I think this is good enough for the presentation. And what I'm going to do today, I'm going to erase some of these details, and I'm going to try to recreate some of them with you guys. So in order to do that, I'm going to have a bunch of reference also to check out the reference. I'm going to explain what I'm looking at the reference at the same time. But also I would like to say, if you guys want to stop me at any time, just feel free to do so, because I want this to be more like a conversation. And I really wish you guys could sit around me and we could just kind of sculpt together. But I guess this will do. So I had a video of me sculpting without thinking about the presentation, like without the pressure of the presentation, which is this one, I believe. No. So is this one here? All right, it's here. So this is me at home sculpting. Of course, this is a little bit speed up, but without thinking too much of what I'm doing, without thinking about this structure thing, without thinking about nothing of that, just like doing my own thing, like just jamming. And this is, so it doesn't say much. That's why I wanted to really go in depth and talk about what I'm doing, because you can see here I'm just like, looks like I'm drawing a few lines, adding like some shapes here and there, but actually I'm thinking there's like so much more going on behind the scenes here. This is what I'm going to try to recreate today, and hopefully you guys are going to incorporate that not only for details, but for secondary forms and also for the primary forms as well. All right, I think that's good enough. You can see that there's, if I pause here, there's like many layers of information. We have the main shapes, the secondary forms, and then on top of that, we have, just thinking about like the detailing, we have like softer wrinkles, darker wrinkles, and then we can think about lighting, shadow as well. So we have like sharper edges, sharper shadows, and then like softer transitions and everything. So, all right. So when I start a project like that, the first thing I do is just gather a bunch of references. And then in this case, I'm not doing a specific gorilla. I'm just doing like a general gorilla because I want to understand like the gorilla world a little bit better. So this is one of my main references. And this is another one. This is another one. And you can see, and now talking about just a little bit how we sculpt things and how we do things in our digital world, or even like traditional sculpture, this is where I came from. So if I sculpt a gorilla and I'm like posting or just presenting exactly like you see here with this mouth still in the middle of a combination of forms and shapes, I don't think this is looking too pleasant to the eye. So I would definitely use this to understand what he's doing with the forms and everything, but I would never like sculpt the final image like this one because it looks a little bit like wobbly and everything. So just something to have in mind. Even the wrinkles in the eyes, so I'm using this reference here just to understand the pattern that it's going. But I think these wrinkles are a little bit boring, like they are like flowing in the same direction. So it's not, I'm not saying that it's wrong, of course not, but this is not super interesting to me to look at. Like this one I like a little bit better. You can see how those wrinkles are shaped and how we have like this kind of spread of the forms, and also the expression looks awesome too, and the photograph and the lighting and everything. This is probably one of my favorites. Here's another one. Here looks like a baby one. And so I'm using this one for the color of the eyes and so on. So after that, after like gathering these references, I go into expressions because, like I was saying, I'm still studying a lot of expressions of the gorillas and everything. So I found a few of these guys. So just same thing, I'm not only looking like at the mouth and the teeth, but also what's happening on the jawline or what's happening when he's like really squeezing his eyes and so on. Right? It's awesome to see what happens inside of the mouth. All right. And then what I do after that, I go into interpretations. What I mean by that is just seeing artists that sculpted gorillas or how they approach it, like the gorilla forms and these wrinkles and everything. So this is work done by Jordu Shell, one of my favorite artists as well. So you can see how he emphasized some of these wrinkles in a fashion way. And then here's another one. So this is Aris Colocontes, I believe. This is Danielle, I believe as well. This is Aris again. I think this one is from Sebastian Lochman. This one is amazing too. So what I'm doing here, like I say, I'm analyzing how they interpreted all these forms and how they approached these wrinkles, what they're emphasizing, what they are paying attention or what they are leaving, and then just trying to understand a little bit more because they went through the process of analyzing like the reference and everything. You can see how cool these wrinkles here are, right? Like the way they flow and the way this guy, I'm sorry, I don't know. This is by Maio Teves. Awesome too. And Jordu again. This is, I believe, Mark Newman. Yeah, right? And this is done like the old school Cinovation style. Rick Baker, one of like the best guys in the world. This is still one of my favorite gorillas made to the date, even comparing to all those digital doubles that we have. Yeah, this is just mind-blowing to me. Well, and then I got into ZBrush. So like I was saying, I sketched like some rough forms, and then I did my topology, and then I went into sculpting. So the sculpting part, I usually don't use a lot of layers. I like to keep myself free between jumping into primary forms, secondary forms, and some of the tertiary forms. But in this case, since I'm doing facial expressions and everything, I have some technical aspects to deal with. So I'm actually doing a little bit of layering. So let me just turn this off. You can see this guy here I ended up redoing the retopo, and it was not looking proportionally good, so I ended up changing a lot of the proportions the day after. And some of more fine wrinkles, and then we can see a little bit of a few stamps that I use, but in this case, it was just like more like a random noise. And some positive details, like little bumps and stuff, and some extra, so I'm kind of sharpening a few of those wrinkles and kind of bringing a little bit more intensity to some areas. Always trying to leverage details, like you can see here, even though everything is detailed and there's a lot of wrinkles, so we have like some rest area, and we have some kind of flow going into the mouth, and then here is a little bit more soft. So this kind of things happens in nature, so it's really nice to pay attention to those when you are doing any type of work. All right. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to disable these guys again. I'm going to create a morph target. This is something very useful when sculpting details or when sculpting these fine passes. And then I'm going to turn everything back on. You can see here that I have a few layers. This is not the file that I was doing the blend shapes, but you can see that I still have some like random shapes, like opening the jaw just to kind of sculpt inside of the mouth. But yeah, let me just zero these out. And then here I'm going to create another layer, call it Summit. And then here I'm going to use my morph brush. And then I'm going to kind of delete some of these details here. More like erasing than, oh, there is a mask here, sorry. So just kind of getting rid of those. You can see the forms underneath doesn't change too much because when I was sculpting these details, I was trying to pay attention to not deform the underneath forms too much. This is something that usually happens when I'm sculpting without thinking too much of the layer system, because I ended up changing like the underneath forms, like the secondary shapes, and making some of like these bone marks stronger and everything. But all right, so before going into the actual detailing, I want to open some of these pieces in Photoshop and explain what I'm actually looking at. So let's just bring this guy here. And now, when it comes to studying, I'm not 100% concerned about getting this right, like right away, right off the bat. What I'm trying to do is study, right? So study for me means probably finding the hardest way to do something and just trying to find a way to actually study the subject instead of just finding the fastest way to do a nice image. This is what I do at work usually. At work, if I was doing this guy, I would probably just stick a bunch of alphas on top, just getting the fine, like the basic proportions of the wrinkles, and then sculpt a little bit on top and do like a mixture, but always thinking about the fastest way to get good results. What I'm doing here, I'm doing the opposite. I'm not concerned about how long this is gonna take me. I'm concerned about studying. So I'm not actually copying any of these wrinkles. I'm trying to study what happens with these wrinkles, what happens with the pattern of these wrinkles are created, and then recreating on my model. It's also the same thing with my own gorilla. I'm not doing a specific one, doing a likeness of a gorilla and everything. So here, I'm gonna just do like a quick draw, just so you guys can clearly see what I'm looking at. So in this image here, what really drives my attention are these wrinkles here, right? Whoops, this is too big, sorry. So what I'm really looking at, these guys here, like coming into this direction, and some of these guys are coming to this direction, so they are kind of fanning a little bit, like spreading, like coming from this same point, the same compression point over here, and then kind of opening. And then we have a bit of flow, and then the flow kind of stops right here in the mouth because he's also like compressing a little bit. But then we have these sharp edges and these sharp wrinkles around the nose. And then underneath that, we have this huge form here, right? This huge form plays a huge role on how we see these shapes kind of diving in. Like, it looks like this is kind of going into this direction here. And then this is just like a, so, and then I'm also seeing like some shapes here. And then here on the eye bag area, I don't see much going. I see just like some really fine details that I'm not concerned about right now. And then you also see this eye bag, this like eyelid sagging on top of the main eyelid here. And then let's just see another image. Let's just pick a different one, like this guy. What I'm seeing this one is a little bit different, but what I like is that we have these more saggy eyes, like these eye bags, like going to this flow. And then you can also see that we have a bag, right? We have like this bag sticking out a little bit, and then we have the eye shapes here. And then we also have some of these forms. So you can see that there is a constantly flow like coming into this direction here, pretty much, which ended up doing like this cross path, like this cross type of wrinkles, which are very familiar to our eyes. And then we also having the nose, they are fanning here as well, and then we also have this sort of like, you can feel the tension, and you can feel the gravity, you can feel like the loosey skin, and also how thick the skin is. Well, let's just do another one. This guy. This guy, I was thinking, I was telling you that it's not super interesting to look at, but we can also like get out something out of it, right? So we are going in this direction. We can feel like this is on top of all this area here. Here's the same thing. We can feel like some of these lines are coming to this direction. And what I was talking about, what I mentioned on the structure form to the 2D form, it's pretty much what I just explained. So when I see this line, I'm thinking about, oh, there's a line coming like in this direction, right? I'm not thinking about, oh, the muscles and everything. I'm just looking at this line. And then after looking at this line, it comes to my mind, oh, so this is happening because we have like this understructure here, and then this eye is like placing, like pushing some of like this skin out, and then we have some of the, like one of the skin folding on top of the other, and then I think about everything else. But when I'm looking at this, for example, I'm seeing, oh, I see a line, and this is just like a straight line, a 2D line. And what I can do on my guy, let's go back to ZBrush. The brushes that I'm gonna use, I have some hotkeys which I really like. So in my case, A is the standard, and then I go to F is the damn standard. I'm gonna keep jumping between those two without thinking too much. So damn standard, I'm gonna pretty much like what Jill was talking about. I drop my intensity a lot on all my brushes. I like to have this soft feeling when I'm sculpting. And also with the standard, I'm gonna drop it a little bit as well. And the S on my keyboard is the clay. And the clay, I have a kind of my setup, so I turn the focal shift a little bit down to like -75, something like that, and I drop the intensity as well. It gives me more what I'm more used to see, which is the clay sculpting. So you can see that it still leaves some sort of marks, but you still have like the softness of the clay brush. I'm gonna use this to soften some of these wrinkles and let me just do the morph, which is gonna be a little bit faster than Ctrl-Z. All right. So what I'm gonna do here right now, I'm gonna try to find a pattern just with a few lines. So right now I'm thinking about lines, right? Of course, I'm still thinking about like this structure and how like these forms are folding, but I got that nailed down already, so I'm gonna just thinking about some lines. I'm gonna go to the standard, like to the damn standard. I'm gonna just try to find a few lines that I find that they are easier to spot on the model. So this eye bag, I'm gonna continue. I'm not doing like straight line like that, so I'm gonna always kind of move my hands a little bit. I'm gonna find these guys here, just emphasizing some of them. And then here, I'm gonna kind of do the same. And then remember the pattern coming like in this direction. So I'm gonna, and then with the A, I'm gonna jump to the standard, and I'm gonna create a little bit of like volume to this line, so creating a little bit more depth, like more the illusion of depth. So I'm kind of jumping back and forth between the damn standard And I'm not too worried about like getting these down right away. Like I was saying, I can always go back to my morph brush and kind of soften them a little bit. And then I can go back and then just sculpt some of them. And then I'm trying to find like the bigger lines. Let's say this guy. And then we can also do this guy here. Remember that we had that fanning action going on here. So let's just try to recreate those. And then I'm getting like some wobbly lines in the middle, so I can just go back and erase with my morph brush, or I can go with my clay and just kind of put some kind of clay marks on top. And then just adding a bit more standard here. One thing that I like to do as well, I'm not sure if I have my hotkeys here. Oh yeah, I do. So I set up 1 and 2 for my cameras. And then what I like to do is, so if you guys are aware of that, it's just like the Zap link. These cameras, this custom 1 and 2, I set up my hotkeys for 1 and 2 in the keyboard, which is very close to all my hotkeys. So what I like to do, because it's really easy to get lost while you're sculpting this. So these wrinkles are kind of working fine, and then you zoom out, and then they look like they are like placed wrong, or like the tension or something looks very bad. So what I like to do too is set up one of my cameras very close to the subject that I'm working, and then another one a little bit far, like this, for example. So I can just jump back and forth between these two and just constantly check my art. When I was doing traditional sculpture, I would always like stand out or just kind of like, yeah, just find a way to really check these forms from different angles. Always keep rotating as well, of course. So let's just go back here and keep sculpting. So one thing that I find interesting, that some people, when they are doing at this stage, this doesn't look too much like what we have on the other side, right? Like, this is a little bit complex to break up when you're starting out. So one thing that I found when I taught a few classes that students helped was, this is interesting. So if I just create like a shape, let's say I'm gonna grab the spray and grab one of these alphas here. For example, this one, I'm gonna, like a noisy bump on top of the surface. Maybe it's just because it's creating an illusion of a different surface that you are sculpting. You can see that everything looks a little bit more soft. So I find that doing this helps people, mostly who are starting out, to kind of have the sensation of they're actually sculpting skin or sculpting some sort of wrinkles and everything. And then we can still keep working on top.
If there's a question out there, I'm right here. I'm ready to go.
Right on. Do it.
They're just watching you. They're enthralled with.
Oh, okay.
No questions. All right.
So you can see that I'm kind of trying to find like the pattern I was talking about before.
I have a question, Gloggo. How often are you doing traditional too with clay? I know you and Raph do stuff together, right?
I try to do as much as I can, and I would say maybe a piece or two a month. It's not as much, but it's not as much as like I used to do, but yeah, it's what because when I'm doing personal work like this one, instead of doing traditional art, I'm doing this one, but I'm also studying blend shapes, animation, everything. So I kind of have to balance my free time. So I'm mainly focused and trying to get like this pattern going. let's just focus on like a small area here, otherwise it will take me a lot more time.
You got a question here on the floor.
Yeah, all right.
Hi, so I noticed in like the beginning of your presentation how you had all the fur on the sculpt. Do you use like the same fibers for eyelashes, or do you actually sculpt those out?
I'm not a heavily user of fiber mesh, to be honest, because usually I'm always doing real-time work, and my approach to real-time stuff when it comes to hair is always hand painting everything in Photoshop. And that's what I can say, that I don't use fiber mesh for eyelashes. I would probably sculpt, or if I'm doing like a realistic portrait or something, I would probably just get a few cones and just place them by hand. All right. So you can see here that I'm sort of starting to emphasize some of like these bags, like this here, for example. I'm just trying, using the standard brush, just trying to go with the form, and also thinking about how this on a profile would be. Like, so it's kind of saggy, it's kind of hanging here. I know there's like multiple ways to set up your brushes, to do gravity, and then all this sort of stuff. But when it comes to this kind of sculpting, I like to keep it simple, so I'm under control. I'm in control of everything that it's going. So I really like to keep things as simple as I can. So I'm just kind of emphasizing some of these wrinkles, and I'm going to go back to the standard. And it's probably saving. All right. I'm going to go back to the standard and start adding a little bit more shapes and small forms. And with the clay, I'm going to soften some of these forms, trying to kind of use the flow that I was describing earlier. So I'm going to keep this flow inside of my head. So even now I'm trying to just blend some of these forms together. I'm going to use my clay brush in the same fashion. So you can see here that it's kind of creating some more forms that I'm not really actually thinking too much, oh, I'm going to sculpt like this shape here. No, I'm just thinking about the flow, like how those wrinkles act. And then we're starting to get a bunch of like minor shapes and forms that I'm not really thinking too much about.
You got a question way here in the back by the door. Here it comes.
Right.
When you start one of your personal project sculpts, what kind of goals do you set for yourself at this point in your career? Thanks.
So it's funny when you say at this point of my career, because I still think I have so much to learn and so much to do. But so the way I set up my personal projects haven't changed since when I started. So I always pick up a team or like something that I really want to improve, and then I do a project that fits this topic, for example. So like I was saying, this one, I want to study a little bit more about blend shapes, I want to study fine detailing, and I want to study hair. So, oh wow, a gorilla, that's awesome. And then that's how I pretty much do all my stuff. And then I'm going to start breaking some of these shapes up a little bit, just creating like smaller shapes. So I'm going to jump back and forth between these three brushes, the dam standard, and the clay. So just adding some forms here, some forms there. Going to increase the size of my brush for the standard. And kind of keep working on these areas. And now I feel like I'm losing some of these shapes around here, so I'm gonna increase my brush size, go back to my dam standard, and then use a little bit of more pressure in some of them. and then I'm gonna start to carve some of those in. And then using my standard, I create volume, and then with using my clay, I soften them up. You can also use the smooth as well, but I find the smooth in this case I kind of lose some of the spontaneously of the other brushes, so I tend to avoid in this case here. And so I'm gonna keep sculpting, and then remember that we had like these shapes here on top of the eyelids and everything. So I'm gonna really try to emphasize that with this flow coming in this direction, thinking that we had like this coming here. Always thinking about forms. So I said that I see lines, but I'm constantly thinking about forms, which is a little bit different. Even though I see a line here, I'm thinking, what is creating this line? It's like the shadows of these forms. And so it is a little bit tricky to explain everything that it's going through my mind, but I hope you guys can understand a little bit of like the difference between these two like modes.
Another question on the floor for you.
When you're working on fine details like this, when do you like tell yourself, oh, I'm going to stop working in symmetry?
When I remove the symmetry?
Yeah, when do you stop working in symmetry when you're working on details like this?
It really depends. So this case here, I sculpted everything without symmetry because, like I was saying, I'm just studying the forms, the wrinkles and everything. But at work, it really depends. So let's say this guy, I have a budget of, like I don't have a lot of UV space for this guy, or I cannot use like super high maps, like big maps. I would probably split this guy in the middle in the UV section, so I'll just sculpt everything symmetrical, and then just break up on the color on a second UV set, for example. But it really depends. So the eyes, probably, I model those, I model everything with symmetry, and then I remove symmetry at a point that all my secondary shapes, my primary forms are formed, and then probably when I started sculpting secondary forms, I kind of broke the symmetry. But I don't have like a rule or something like that. What I'm gonna do here as well, I like to use the standard brush. Let me just drop this down a little bit, get this very small, and then kind of carve some of these wrinkles with the standard as well. So we're gonna create a different sort of cavity. So it's really easy to get lost in this process. So one thing that so usually when I start doing this, I don't get it right away, so I kind of have to repeat a little bit. So what I usually do when let's say I'm working at home, before jumping straight into my model itself, I would probably just grab a sphere and just subdivide it a little bit and just kind of warm up my wrist and my hands and my mind, putting that into kind of the right mindset that I'm gonna be sculpting gorilla wrinkles or something like that. So this is also a really nice exercise you guys can do. You can just grab a sphere and just try to recreate some like different wrinkles and different patterns that you will see in nature or in creatures and stuff. So you can just, with the damn standard, just kind of start playing with some of these shapes and these forms. And you can pretty much spend all day long doing these and just kind of having fun. Just trying to, and then you do like bigger ones. And of course, this is kind of a flat surface in a way. If we had something bent, it would be a little bit easier to kind of follow like the shapes and the lines in a more organic pattern. But yeah, you can pretty much like study. I'm saying study because it's really just studying not like really producing any artwork worth of showing. And then you can come here with, you can see in some wide angles, looks cool. Then you can come here, and then you can kind of start breaking this up a little bit more. Always thinking about what the skin is doing and everything. And then you can start adding some more breakups in these corners, in these transitions here. Right. And then on top of that, let's go back to the gorilla. I don't want to spend too much time on that. So on top of that, I would probably just put a lot of more positive details. That's how I call it. Just like bumps and like stuffing kind of sticking out, like smaller, very fine, smaller shapes. So I'll probably just dial this down and then go back and grab one of these alphas here, for example. And then you can do this in multiple ways, but I like to use the drag rat. So you can kind of find a right size to do this, increase the intensity, and then start placing some of like these dots. And then what I usually do on the dots thing is, it's funny because I get lost very easily on when I'm doing these details because I think my mind goes in another stage or whatever. I'm constantly listening to music, so oh, this is so cool. And then it's super easy for me to lose track and then look back and like looks totally like a mess. So what I like to do is I like to do these positive details in a different layer because every time you add one, oh, that's cool, man, and it's kind of adding some information, some details, right? So you want to kind of add this everywhere, and then it kind of loses the effect of what you're trying to do. You can see here that I have like some dots here and there, like smaller, like bigger, but so having on a separate layer, like I was showing, you can just turn the layer down, create a morph target, and then you can go back and then erase some of these forms, right? And then on top of what I'm doing here, I would probably just pick a few lines or a few wrinkles and just make those a little bit stronger. So I'll go with my dam standard, probably a little bit smaller at this time, and I can also increase the intensity just a little bit, and then really use a little bit of pressure, and then kind of go a little bit more precise with what I'm carving, what I'm taking away, giving the illusion of like forms are folding over.
There's a question back here for you.
All right.
Hello. You added the noise before you sculpted the skin, and it gets lost after you do that. Is there a way to retain that noise on the skin texture with the wrinkles?
Yeah, so this noise, like I was saying, is just something I was showing because some of you may find this helpful. But at this case, I wasn't using this at all. I was just plain sculpting like the forms. And then on top of that, I probably, I had a very fine like stamp of just some, you can see that it doesn't change too much, just soften some of like these shapes a little bit and give me that kind of fine, grungy look of the skin, which is what I'm gonna try to do. A lot of what is still missing on the sculpture, I'm gonna do on the texture. So I find that texture and sculpture when you're doing this sort of work kind of goes along. So there are some stuff that you really need to emphasize on the texture, and then some stuff that you have to emphasize on the sculpture. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen, but if you do a live cast of a person, it's not always looks like the actual person because we actually think a lot in colors a lot of the time. And then some people, when I was doing makeup effects, some people we would see and say, oh, this is like very sharp or very deep. and then we would do a live cast of that person, and then looking at the plaster piece, like, oh, that it's not that deep, it's not that sharp, it's just maybe because there's like more blue or like more color. So probably some of these wrinkles I could emphasize in the color, and I'm pretty sure I'll have like a lot of fun texturing this guy. Even though most of the pictures and the reference, they kind of look just like a flat color, but it's not, for sure. And then, how is the time? I still have time?
You got 15 minutes.
Okay. All right, so let me just do a little bit more of this, and then I carry a book with me, and at work I have a Google Docs that I'm constantly putting and writing down insights that I have, and I would like to share some of those with you today. So I made up 2 slides that I want to discuss a little bit, but let me just scope a little bit more, and maybe I can find like some cool stuff to discuss. And then, oh, there is a mask, so I'm gonna keep trying to break this up a little bit more. Be careful to not create like a bunch of lines like that. It's it will lose the purpose of like all these wrinkles and this sculpting. One thing that I found sculpting these sort of wrinkles cool was that I could grab the dam standard and just create like a kind of a cross type of wrinkles on top of everything, just giving a little bit of more texture. You can see that now it's gonna really start to read more like a
Question coming at you on the floor.
Hey, I have a question about when you start detailing, do you typically detail in like passes all over the model, or do you prefer to work in a concentrated area?
So yeah, it really depends on what I'm doing. In this case here, what I did, I think I mapped out this. You can see like there's like very harsh lines here. But I probably mapped out the whole thing just to get a sense of what I'm gonna do, and then I really focus here and work from like the beginning to the final look of one area, just to see if this approach that I'm doing would work. Like what I'm doing here, some of the stuff that I did today works and some don't work as much. So I would probably finish just a small area or on a sphere or something like that, just to get the hang of what I'm actually doing, and then I'll probably just like spread across all the entire piece. But it's not like I grab a piece like this, like a place like this, and just kind of do like these super fine wrinkles without thinking about everything else. I think Jill mentioned something like going around with the form as well, without having the feeling of it's just like a thin layer applied on top. Just try to like really go with the flow with the forms as well, even when you're sculpting fine details. This is very useful. One thing that I always have in mind as well is just to don't overdo it. So when you go from a distance, I still want to get rid of these main shapes, like these main forms. I don't want to go crazy here, something that sometimes I do. And then, oh, all these wrinkles, and then you keep like adding, oh, I'm gonna add, this is looking like super 3D, and then you go back, and then, oh, what the hell? And then it looks like a mess. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. So this is something that I really enjoy doing. And it's really hard to understand some of these wrinkles, and then I kind of find pleasure in these challenges. So it's not always, like I was saying, it's not always about doing the best image. It's more about what you are gathering from this study, what I'm actually learning while I'm doing this. I can do like an awesome image, post online, and get a lot of people saying, oh, this was cool, but what did I actually learn? What I'm like bringing to my actual career and my personal development out of this project. So this is something that I'm constantly trying to do on everything I do, always trying to find ways to keep improving and ways to keep pushing myself. That's why I'm studying a lot of blend shapes too, and doing a little bit of animation, and now the hair and everything, and also anatomy. Like I said, Andrew just told me that I pretty much know nothing about anatomy. That's how I feel right now. Yeah. And then
You're not the only one. You're not the only one.
Yeah.
You got a question on the floor here.
All right.
Yes, I was curious for the beginning of the process. For the beginning, do you spend a lot of time making proper edge flows? You mentioned something in but I didn't understand.
I'm sorry.
Edge flows for the eyes, for the everything, for easier sculpting?
I'm sorry, I couldn't get the beginning.
Yes, I was curious for the beginning of the process. When you make a main shape, do you look for the proper edge flow for the eyes and everything, or you just start sculpting details?
When I'm sculpting the main forms, when I'm finding the character, I really don't care about topology. That's why I usually do a Dynamesh or a Zero Mesh and everything. But then it gets to a point that I really have got to tell myself, oh, this is locked. I won't change any more of this because I want to, in this case, I want to work with the blend shapes and everything, so I cannot keep changing everything. And then, so I'm at this point right now that I'm locked to these proportions and everything, so I'm just focused on the detailing part. So, yeah. This fold here actually looks cool. I might keep this one.
You're feeling good about what you're doing here?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm learning.
I sculpt that live, people.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, it's kind of actually looks good. All right. I think we are almost over, so I just want to go.
You got 8 minutes if you want to.
8 minutes. All right.
Be very exact here if we want.
All right. So this is just something that I want to tell you guys. So I find it very amazing to have this opportunity to talk to all of you that are here, and also everyone that is watching online. So I have this feeling that I really need to give you guys back some stuff. So one thing that I've been learning and that I brought with me, even from Brazil, was listen to your leads or your art directors or your supervisors, even though sometimes they are telling you things that you don't like or you don't accept. You really gotta listen to what they're saying, and it's like, even if you are showing this to a person that really don't understand what you're doing, but if they point something out that for them makes no sense, you really got to think about that. So sometimes I show my mom stuff, and my mom really loves everything I do. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. But sometimes she really does say something, oh, but these eyes look weird. Or even my wife. But my wife is an artist, so she's more into it. So she's always telling me that I suck. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. She supports me a lot. She's watching right now, so I'm just joking. So my mom, like I was saying, for example, my mom points me something, oh, these eyes look weird, and I can have this discussion, but these eyes are like the way they're supposed to be, whatever. So if she's telling me that something's wrong, there's probably something going on that area. And if your leads or art directors or supervisors, which are supposed to be people that know way more and then being in the industry way more time than you, if they're telling you something that you gotta change something in your model and your work, if you pay attention to that and if you do it, you'll be improving. It's just like taking a class too. Just, I'm doing this anatomy thing here, and then someone points you, oh, this is kind of wrong, can you tweak that? And then if you ask why you want me to change that, he probably have a like a nice response to that, a nice reply, and then he will always probably explain why he wants then things to be changed. And then you can also do this with your peers at work or at school as well. Just ask your guys, your people, your friends, hey, what do you think about the work that I'm doing? They're gonna say, oh, this is kind of cool, but I don't like this area here. And just take this into consideration. Maybe you're not changing on that project, but just thinking about that, just have that in mind. Another thing that I'm always grateful is to be surrounded by artists. And even here, I'm surrounded by all of you. Someone, I think, better than me, someone like still like just starting out. But it's not the case. It's just like the feeling of be grateful, like all times, and always have this mindset of learning. And at work, I think one thing that happens a lot that I see, people have a lot of ego. So at work, things are different than personal life. So just do your personal work, and then you can do whatever you want. Constantly check your work. I think this is something that I explained, and also Jill mentioned about the shape, forms, and break up the details, how the character or what you're doing is reading from a distance, and then how, as you approach the character, how you are reading all these forms. So one thing that I always do at work or personal work, it doesn't matter, I'm constantly checking what I'm doing at the end in the engine, or rendering, or taking photographs. Sometimes I take photographs of the screen because it's just giving me a different perspective of what my eyes got used to see all the time. So just taking like this guy into Maya, even though like the perspective, the camera was a little bit similar, it was just different. I saw a bunch of stuff that was not seen. The study thing, I think I already mentioned how I approach study, and then study is something that it's really important. I think it's the word study, it's getting lost. Like nowadays, people just do whatever, they call it study, and then people just like copying images, they just say study. And then I think there are multiple ways of doing a project. Like I was saying, you can do it as fast as you can. You're gonna be retaining a little bit of information, but if you really study and take your time, you're gonna retain a much more. And then I have these two stages, not I have, but I think about these two stages when I'm learning and then when I'm applying this knowledge. So when I was sketching these lines and study, I was studying these wrinkles, and then it got to a point that I have to apply what I learned. One thing, even on the software side, but I think it translates to everything in what we do, master the basics. The foundations, the basics, and let's say, for example, human anatomy, or even like on the software, whenever you have a problem, usually the solution goes to go back to the foundations. So this is just something that I wanted to put out there. Take courses, this is something I think very useful. Someone mentioned, oh, at the point of my career, I'm still taking a lot of courses, and I hope to take as much courses as I can. I don't have a lot of time anymore, which is kind of understandable, but I do want to take as much courses as I can, see from different perspectives how people see things, and just trying to gather all this information. And then, like I was saying, keep practicing, and gotta enjoy the process. I think this is very cliche. A lot of people talking about that, but I just wanted to put out there as well. It does take time, so you gotta make sure that you are really enjoying, and then balancing having fun with actual work and actual personal time, building a portfolio and everything.
Another question right here.
Hi. Do you like to use a lot of Udemy, or do you do multiple materials on your stuff?
It depends on the project and the budget and everything, but usually a mix of the two.
All right. Anything else? Man, I can just drive down and see them. You guys can't. There you go. John Mahoney.
What type of clay do you use for your traditional work nowadays?
Nowadays, I'm using mostly monster clay. I used to do a lot of work in Chavan, and in Brazil, mostly water clay. But here, I have like a small apartment, So it's pretty much monster clay and sculpey.
Is that why you do a lot of asymmetry sculpting, because you're doing so much clay?
Yeah.
And you feel that's probably why you're good at it too?
Yeah.
I'm trying to say something here to the students. It's good to sculpt in clay too.
Yeah.
It makes you only a better ZBrush user. Anything else? Well, there's one more. I'm coming. I see you. Here we go. Here we go.
What was the poly count on that gorilla head?
I have no idea. I can check.
It's a joke.
It is. There's too many numbers here. 11? No, 1 million. No, 11 million. No, 5. I don't know. You guys can check here.
I'll get the answer.
Yeah. Is it the total?
The head.
Oh no, okay.
There you go.
Here.
He's at 7.2 million.
7 million.
There
yes, 7 million.
That's exciting.
So yeah, where was that going? Exactly. 7.2 million, and then what?
And they were just wondering, you know, what's wrong with that? Another question. Here we go. Livening up the group.
I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Hey, when you tackle like primitive forms and basic shapes, do you try to like get by that process quickly? Or do you spend a lot of time really correcting your very basic shapes?
I don't want to correct myself when I'm doing detailing, but it does happen. So that's one of the reasons I usually don't do a lot of layers, because I'm constantly changing like the shapes underneath. But at this case, if I was going to change a shape underneath, I would disable that layer, go back to that stage and everything. But yeah, it's really tricky, because even now I look at it, even though I think it's cool, there is still a lot of things, even like main proportions, that I want to tweak. But yeah, it's like a constantly battle. Yeah.
Here we go, another question right here.
When you sculpt or like details or even the big shapes, do you build large number of brush library, or do you work with only specific few?
Oh, with brushes, you mean? Yeah. I mainly use these brushes here and just a few alphas. That's pretty much it. Unless I'm doing something very specific, but I try to keep as simple as I can.
Sculpt it, don't cheat it. Seems to be a theme. Final Fantasy did it, Glauco's doing it. I'm just saying, sometimes the best way is doing it.
Yeah.
Hi, Glauco. Found your work.
Thank you.
Question about your sort of approach on reference.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you devote on analyzing your reference, whether it be for yourself or for work?
I really spend a lot of time looking at references. Even like this gorilla, I remember when I had the idea of doing a gorilla, I was watching a bunch of videos on the internet, and also, I say before going to bed, I wanted to kind of thinking about something different than work. I would just look at a bunch of gorillas and stuff. So, yeah, I'm not sure.
Right before bed.
Yeah, right before bed, and then I have like some gorilla dreams, and then yeah, and then yeah, pretty much. But I don't have a specific amount of time, right? Yeah, this is my gorilla, my favorite gorilla here. Yeah.
All right, last question, because then we're going to hand them over to Louis, and we're going to get ready for prizes and sculpt off.
So when you're about to model something, do you look at like the underlying like muscle anatomy, or do you just look at the reference pictures?
I do look at the skull structure a lot, because this is what's going to drive all the forms. And then, of course, the muscles too, but the muscles sit on top of the bones, right? That's why if we remove all the bones, it will be just like a bunch of muscles laying down. So I think the bone structure is the most important one to look at when you're starting something. But then, of course, I would look at the muscles too. But I wouldn't go too crazy, to be honest. Like this guy, I was just finding like the right ones, like the ones that really shows or like deforms the anatomy. But I wouldn't go too crazy about like what's really going on. But in this case, it's not that hard because it's very similar in a way to a human head. In a way, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Glaucolaga.
Okay, so this is a little different, right? You get the crowd right in front of you. You can hide behind those white lights. First of all, thanks for sitting with us. You know,
it's my pleasure.
Yeah, put it there. Good to see you. Okay.
See you too.
So, long way from Brazil. Something in the water down there, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not the only one. There's a few. There was a couple of your compatriots roaming around. Boa gente. There's a few people back there as well. That's good people in Portuguese, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
a bunch of Brazilians here.
Yeah, apparently. Yesterday had the original guy himself. Grossetti was roaming around. You had a chance to speak with him and say hello. You're friends?
Yeah.
Right?
We work together.
Yeah, you work together. I mean, I hope so.
Yeah.
You're trying to orchestrate some kind of like makeshift conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also there was a few other people roaming around last evening. We had a bunch of. You had a nice time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
it was awesome. Yeah.
I want to go.
Great party.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. That's
okay.
fun.
Everybody had a good time last night, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned towards the tail end of the presentation. I want to sort of compound some things you were saying. You were talking about truly studying something and looking at things in a what I like to call like a masterful way. And really taking your time with it. Can you expand on that process? Because you've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
At this point. I mean, you're not just sort of doing it digitally, but traditionally as well for some time.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about more in depth in that process. How does that work for you?
So I'm kind of self-taught in a way. I've taken a lot of courses, but I don't really. So as my degree, for example, I studied film.
Right.
So I never had a chance of approaching. Like drawing or sculpture in a really structurized way. So what I came up with studying with Alex Oliver and then later on with Grossetti, my friend, we kind of studied together too. And then what I came up with, it was always thinking about recreating the forms and also watching a bunch of Glenn Vilpul's DVD. He always talks about...
Nice guy, Glenn.
Yeah, he's like the best. And then he always talks about analyze and recreate, and this is something that I'm trying to constantly do as well. So instead of getting the product right away looking good, I'm more concerned about. I know that it takes more time in the long run to achieve something good, but I feel like I'm studying. I feel like I'm actually paying attention, like recreating something instead of just like. Nah, okay, looks okay, you know?
Close enough, yeah. No, you're not trying to get close enough. You're actually trying to understand why it's doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
That's something that...
Yeah, so when I started doing ZBrush, I did a bunch of likeness studies, and then I always had this wrong image in my head that using a photograph to do a likeness was wrong, and then I don't think it's wrong anymore, but when I do a likeness, for example, right now, if I'm doing personal work where I'm not concerned about getting the shapes right away, I would probably just trying to imagine the skull of the guy and then kind of, not actually sculpt the skull, but just trying to understand what I'm seeing.
Okay.
Instead of just like, all right, then like the eyes look good and then everything without thinking too much of what I'm doing, you know? So this is...
So you're looking at it from a more pragmatic standpoint,
Yeah.
where you're trying to say, okay, before perhaps, if I'm not mistaken, you were looking at making, let's say, a likeness that was just trying to nail the likeness for the sake of copying.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to sort of work further to say, okay, well, how can I extend my knowledge of this pursuit further?
Exactly.
Okay, really neat.
Yeah, I think in 2D we have this a little bit, it's a little bit easier to explain. We have the construction, like way of doing it.
On the drawing, of course.
Yeah. And then on sculpture is a little bit different because it's more like organic, it's 3D.
Yeah.
But I think we still have the same like differences. So I'll try to get both.
Can I just digress for 1 second? Speaking of structure, do you find it odd, because I find it tremendously weird, that these two bottles are... Right, I mean, something's gone terribly wrong in the world when your water bottles are on it. Look at that, it's like the Leaning Tower of Tucci. Anyway, so you spent, it's kind of weird, right? I just want to turn it that way, okay? It's Sunday, people. Right, at least it's not curving that way. Anyway, what are you going to do? Who I was thinking of before was Pedro Conti was here too yesterday. He's your friend as well.
Yeah,
nice guy, right? Is he still here? Are you still here? No, he's probably not here. Okay.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. These guys they're resting.
Yeah, a bunch of Brazilians yesterday. Igor was here as well.
Right?
Gilberto.
My goodness, it was like a slow takeover. I don't know. You mentioned to the people the Uncharted stuff, of course, right? That's a world-class team. Describe your experience deeper with that and how you mentioned egos before, and you said it's important to sort of leave that at the door. What did you mean by that? Because there's, we've heard throughout the course of the weekend that there are times when certain ideas come to the forefront. Like, for instance, Jason Martin earlier said he may have a good idea and comes into the workplace and then is open to the idea of changing it alongside some of these other guys. How do you guys approach it as well?
That's pretty much what I'm trying to do. When I talk about ego, it's not only about the others, about myself included.
Yeah, self-management.
So yeah, it's really easy to. So you are actually putting a lot of time into something, and then someone that in your head just stop by and say, "Yeah, change this. Doesn't look good." And then you say, "Oh, but I've been doing this for a while, and then, this is more this sort of thing that I'm trying to do." But then again, if you listen to what he's saying, maybe you can incorporate why he don't like that, he doesn't like that, and then, yeah, that's
like being more reflective from afar.
Yeah,
I think that's a good point of reference because we heard that a few times throughout the day as well. Earlier today we were talking about that outside as well. To say that you have to be able to look at it from some other perspective, and then we also heard about thinking about it. Production is production. So a lot of times, people come and say, "Hey, look at my portfolio." Well, okay, cool, but does it fit in the pipeline and such?
Exactly. Yeah, that happens.
But you had a positive experience creating that Uncharted 4 game as well.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, I had definitely.
Top class, I mean.
I definitely had a great time. We had a great team going.
Yeah.
And then Frank was leading. It was super cool.
He's okay.
Yeah, he's okay.
My friend.
And then it was super nice. Like I'm super proud of working on that game. Yeah. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, nice. I like that. You're a man of soft-spoken man. I mean, if you were up here, the guy's got arms the size of this is serious. What's your workout regimen? What are we doing? Every day is arm day with this guy. It's like, good thing I leave my jacket on. I look like Peter Parker up here against Venom. Here we go.
Actually, yesterday I had
holy moly!
I had someone asking me yesterday what's actually my workout like.
Yeah, right. It was boom!
I don't look myself as that. I don't think I'm like.
Oh, it's nice. You keep healthy,
Yeah, I just like working out.
Yeah, you're breaking the mold, right? For many years, the CG industry has been perceived as a bunch of guys in dark rooms eating pizza and sucking Slurpees and having cookies. But here we are. I don't think that it resonates powerfully enough that the Alex Oliver influence is so deep with you guys.
For sure.
I think it needs to be sort of pounded into the public knowledge that. How many people have heard of Alex Oliver? Yeah, not everyone. So this is like an issue. This guy, not to take away from you, obviously, but he's the teacher, right? I mean, this is, yeah, we can give him a moment because he's a super nice guy.
Of course.
Probably like one of the most renowned sculptors, and you have the dubious pleasure of working alongside him and learning from him.
Yeah.
You said you were untrained, and you gave yourself this sort of push forward to do it. I think that's probably the best part. Is some of us we go into certain pursuits and we're untrained academically, and we have these like. Capacities that we develop on our own without perversion. Does anybody get what I mean by that? Like you go to school and they try to fill your head, but I think maybe you discovered him at the right time. How would you describe your relationship with him and how he helped you move along?
So at that time, I think it was 2006, 2005, he moved from
this is 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, he moved from a different city to São Paulo, where I'm come from. And then at that time I was studying like 3D Max and animation, that kind of stuff. I wanted to be an animator. And then I saw one of his presentations, so he was sculpting traditionally and also using ZBrush 2.0, I think, at that time. Okay. He was just starting to get the hang of ZBrush. And then it was like, oh, that's super cool, but I guess you gotta have talent to do that. That's sort of like mentality I had. And then at the end of the presentation, he mentioned, oh, you don't really need to have talent. You just gotta like practice and keep pushing. And that really inspired me a lot. And then that was pretty much it. That was my start on like sculpting and modeling and everything.
Right.
Like the challenge of if you tell me, oh, this is super hard, but it's doable, I would get inspired. This is what really
the truest pursuit of mastery. That's
yeah.
cool. You know, well, everything's doable. I mean, apparently they're on their way to Mars.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. You do have an unmistakable style. I think the people would, right? Yeah. People know when it's your work. I mean, it's unmistakable. I would like to draw attention in particular to a couple of things that I've noticed over the years. The Bloody Necromancer, I think that piece is timeless, to be honest with you. Maybe that's just what I'm into.
Nice.
Sucking the blood. Those reptilian moments that we have in front of the lights, not good. Sucking the blood from babies. I promise tonight I'm refueling. It's a timeless piece to me that transcends even the software capabilities and actually stands solidly. It doesn't matter what new features or things happen. I think that the tremendous quality of that piece is timeless, in my opinion, as a piece of modern art, and a heck of a design also. You know, high five.
Yeah. Thanks.
Great success. Tell us about the process involved in bringing that to life, because
sure. So I wanted to do a necromancer because I like this dark.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah. And
see your arm a second?
Yeah. Okay. I found a bunch of like concept art and stuff. So I found one that really like stand out to me. I don't know why, because it's really good, I guess.
Yeah, it's
and then I have the link on the web on that.
You remember the name of the guy?
No, I don't remember. No, I
Me
don't
neither.
remember. Yeah.
Darn it.
Yeah. Do you have it?
Sorry, whoever you are out there, we really like it.
But yeah, in the end, so that was like my first main inspiration. But the work that I did has pretty much just a few elements and more of like the mood of the scene, of the vibe. But if you compare those two, it's like nothing.
Night and day, right?
Yeah, like the head and even like the costume, like the body and everything has like nothing to do with the concept. It was just like more our starting point for me. Oh, this is kind of look. And I was also playing a lot of Bloodborne at that time.
Okay.
So that really inspires me too a lot. Then you want to know like what else? Like how I started.
What you want to tell me? I mean, there's about 1,000 people sitting in front of you. You can
no,
hold
it
close to the chest if it's too personal. Yeah.
So I pretty much gather a bunch of references of dark stuff that I liked, and also a bunch.
What kind of dark stuff are we talking about? Like dark web or like?
And a bunch of.
The Brazilian connection, you know. I know.
A lot of Iggy Pop.
Nice.
Iggy
Pop.
Yeah,
now that you say that, geez.
Yeah.
Oh, you just got a spark from Louis.
Yeah. And
what?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and how like he has like his rib cage on and everything.
See what I'm doing there?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was one of my main inspirations too for that piece. And then I jumped straight into ZBrush with Dynamesh, sketched the whole thing.
Yeah, cool.
And then I did a retopo of some of the things, some other parts I just Dynamesh it and then did a quick decimated to throw in game.
Yeah.
Just because I wasn't concerned about doing topology at all.
It was for you, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I do that on a daily basis at work. But anyways, and then even for the detailing and everything, I was using Substance at that time as well, and also was constantly checking in game what I should sculpt and what I should not. And then the head, I had a lot of fun doing the head. It was mostly based on Iggy Pop, and then I put a little bit of twist on that.
Well, that's so cool because I didn't realize that until you said it. Now that I think of it, that makes sense.
Nice.
That's a second reference to Iggy Pop across the weekend. So, mental note: when collecting reference for cool characters and designs, Iggy Pop, Keith Richards, and
Keith Richards,
all kinds of other good stuff happening here. Now, here's the thing. How do you maintain that? Because your output, both traditionally and digitally, is so high quality. How do you maintain that creative spark? This is a lot of times something that people come up against is artistic fatigue. We mentioned it before. I would like to get as many perspectives on that as possible because I think that there's different ways that people deal with that. You seem to have a very positive outlook to begin with, which is very Brazilian as well. They're always smiling, these guys.
I don't know. Every time I feel like down or uninspired, I remember where I came from, and then I remember what I want to achieve, what I want to do, and how far I'm still from my goals. Like even more on like the personal side, like what I want to be able to create and what I want to be able to do. Not even talk about professionally, and then every time I feel like I'm not doing anything, I just see guys like Carlos Huante, for example. And
nice guy.
Yeah, like his
good.
work is just like pretty good. just mind-blowing to me. Yeah, I just see his work and then the way he like do the forms and everything. So that's just a really nice inspiration. Or even like working with Grossetti and like all these guys. It's really, now that I get work with them, I feel inspired pretty much every day.
Yeah, Raphael, it's hard not to be inspired when you're around Raphael because you can feel that kind of real love for the thing that he has.
Yeah.
I think that's, I like hanging out with him as well.
But I do get some downtimes too. So sometimes I like surfing a lot, so I go surfing, I just say whatever, I'm not doing any art today. So I still trying to find the right balance.
Did you meet Denzel?
Denzel?
He's Australian, yeah, from Australia. You guys are wrestling with the Sharks.
Oh yeah?
Right? Yeah.
Jeez.
You look like you've been wrestling with the Sharks. Anyway, I'm kidding.
Yeah, so I kind of try to balance everything.
Cool. So you've taken up surfing here in America?
Yeah.
And
I do almost every week.
Oh wow, cool. Okay.
From County Line.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet. And you're doing okay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you haven't hurt yourself. That's good.
Not yet.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I think I'd like to thank you on behalf of all of us here. I think it's been a real pleasure to sit with you, and what a weekend, right? I mean, how do you feel about that, being involved in this cavalcade that was the ZBrush Summit 2016? We had, look at the guys like John Mahoney in the front row, Ara's sitting over there, there's like a whole bunch of De Leon. They're all sitting in here, and there's these, you know, we have, that goes, the list goes on. I can't even see past these lights, to be honest with you. But I think that's Khrushchevsky's beard. Is that Khrushchevsky's beard? Yeah, right? That's the patented laugh. How do you feel about that? For me, I'm blown away, man.
It's truly, I feel blessed to be here, and I come such a long way. I still have like a lot of things to do, but like looking at these guys, watching what I have to say is just inspiring because I've been following these guys' work for such a long time.
Isn't that something?
Even before I started, I was already like looking up to these guys, and then it's just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, you're a long way from Rio.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that something? Same here. I'm a long way from the attic at my mother's house.
Yeah. But I'm blessed to be here.
Don't stop. Don't tell them the secret. Probably like a couple thousand.
Yeah, but everything is cool here. My wife, I live with my wife, so
you're adjusting well to America?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. It's been okay.
Yeah.
They're good people. Any famous last words to all the people at home in Brazil? Anything you want to say to people at home in Brazil, the friends that are watching, they see you climb over the fence and make a new life for yourself?
I'd like to say...
In Portuguese. Fala português.
Em português, é a hora do show.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
No, I just want to say, I just want to say thanks. Thanks to everyone that is here and then it's watching too. I hope
Muito
you guys...
obrigado a toda a gente aqui, casa.
Yeah, you can translate to Portuguese.
Yeah, I'm translating to Portuguese. You don't want to do it, I'll do it.
Yeah, just I really appreciate the time that you guys had to watch what I had to say, and I really, truly hope you guys learned something or got something out of it. And just gotta keep working, man. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm gonna keep doing.
Yeah, great last words here. You know, just really good advice towards mastery. Keep on working, and I think on behalf of myself and everybody else at Pixelogic, the people, the thousands and thousands sitting here inside the green screen hangar, the famous Noman School of Visual Effects, even the ones that are imagined and invisible, like the guy to my left back there. All the people at home watching in ZBrush TV land, this has been another incredible ZBrush Summit. That's 3 in a row. I want to say thank you, first of all, to Glauco for sitting with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guys, put your hands together for him.